Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in.
In late 1999, the King family filed a civil case accusing Loyd Jowers and others, including unspecified governmental agencies, for the wrongful killing of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The King family did not believe James Earl Ray was guilty of the crime.
The King case was reopened after Memphis bar owner Loyd Jowers came forward. Jowers ran Jim's Grill across from the Lorraine Motel and claimed another Memphis businessman, Frank Liberto, paid him $100,000 to contract the killer.
What did Frank Liberto ask you to do?
He asked me to handle some money transaction, hire someone to assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King.
We're into an open.
In a motion to reopen this matter filed by the petitioner with a claim that there is new scientific evidence that may be capable of establishing that the petitioner is actually innocent. Is that what we're here for today?
That's right.
James Earl Ray stuck with that. After he recanted, he stuck with the fact that he did not commit this murder for the rest of his life, despite offers of freedom and a lot of money.
I didn't meet James until really 10 years after the killing. I met him in August of '78 when Reverend Abernathy asked me to go and interrogate him because Abernathy was having some questions. So it took me a while to prepare. I thought they had the right guy. And I went up to the prison and we spent 5 hours with James, and I put him through a great deal of a stressful interrogation. And we came away from that meeting with a firm belief that he was not the shooter.
I wound up being the last judge hearing the James Earl Ray matter. Did he in fact assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King? And had he not died and his local attorney not died in close succession, it would have been my finding that he was not the gunman.
The 1999 trial happened the year after James died. James died in prison. And then it occurred to me that because we had what we had on Jowers, we could start a civil action. So we brought the civil action in Memphis, Tennessee, in 1999. Trial went on for 30 days, 70 witnesses, and clearly laid out all of the evidence that we had at that point in time that had never been made available to the criminal court or an evidentiary hearing.
That Remington 760 Game Master they've got in the Civil Rights Museum is not the murder weapon. The thing the state relied upon was the rifle, but modern scientific methodology excluded that rifle from being the murder weapon. The bullet they pull out of King's body has a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 11 1/4 inches. The rifle that Ray had a rate of rifling twist of 1 turn in every 10 inches and a bad manufacturing defect that is not apparent on the death slug. He was shot with an XM21. It's a 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO caliber weapon with a special stainless steel barrel. The shot came from the dormitory in the fire station through a window that had been slightly parted. It wasn't the flop house and it wasn't in those bushes. And it was a 2-man hit team that killed him from the fire station dormitory. I did talk to a Captain Tommy Smith, who retired as head of homicide for the Memphis Police Department, who was the first detective on the scene. He said the shot couldn't have been from the flop house. There was a limb about this thick growing diagonally through the window, and you couldn't even see the Lorraine Motel from that location. He said, I came back with crime scene in about an hour, and the whole tree had been cut down, and I found out there was a cut down order sent out to the sanitation department.
The U.S. 111th Military Intelligence Group were at Dr. King's location during the assassination for undisclosed reasons. The 20th Special Forces Group had an 8-man sniper team deployed at the assassination location on that day. The regular and constant Memphis police protection for Dr. King was removed 1 hour before the assassination. Military intelligence had set up photographers on the roof of the fire station with clear view to Dr. King's balcony. Along with illegally sanitizing the crime scene by cutting down tree branches, police abandoned investigative procedure of interviewing witnesses who lived by the scene of the shooting.
The other special ops units that were on the roofs that day during the assassination, why and you found various witnesses to attest to that, why were they up there?
Well, they were up there to photograph everything and everyone who was in the area. And there were 2 cameramen who were put up there by the captain of the fire station, who also testified and gave the statement under oath. There was no question about it. They showed military credentials, and they were put up there. And I believe that they were there. They're put up by John Downey, who was the head of the 902nd Military Intelligence Group. And Downey coordinated a good deal of the backup military activity. It was Downey who chose the 2 military snipers, special ops guys, who were at 2 different spots and were prepared to take out Martin King.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you give here today will be the truth?
I do. And it has always been a feeling that there are many unanswered questions that have not been addressed. So, for many years we avoided this issue. I guess you could kind of say we've been in denial.
We know that J. Edgar Hoover was doing all kinds of illegal things to Dr. King. We know that. We also know that Bobby Kennedy approved it, as the Attorney General was approving illegal wiretaps. It's not a hard stretch for some people to say, well, if they were doing that, then certainly they were capable of killing him.
We believe that the FBI had something to do with that conspiracy. It seems to me that the surveillance that my husband underwent as he traveled around the world by the FBI and the things that have already been revealed that are on record point toward the FBI having certainly known what was happening.
Well, there's no doubt that from what the evidence that we've uncovered, that Hoover was a very key player in the assassination of Martin Luther King.
The FBI sent King an anonymous letter threatening to expose his extramarital affairs.
The letter, known as the suicide letter, refers to the leader of the civil rights movement as sexually psychotic, a dissolute, abnormal imbecile, and a fraud. It ends with the famous warning: you have just 34 days. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation. The letter, along with a purported audio tape of MLK's extramarital affairs, was sent to the King home and discovered by his wife, Coretta Scott King. Dr. King assumed the letter and tape were from the FBI, and after his death, a Senate committee confirmed as much.
The King family won the case, and the jury ruled that Jowers and the unnamed government co-conspirators were guilty for the unlawful death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The jury also agreed that James Earl Ray could not have fired the shot that killed Dr. King. Dexter King, the youngest son of the family, told the New York Times that he hoped history books would be rewritten to reflect this version of the assassination. But nearly 2 decades later, this case is largely forgotten, and it is still commonly accepted in schools and on the news that James Earl Ray killed Martin Luther King Jr. and acted alone.
Indeed, a trial for Mr. Ray is our last hope to reveal the truth about my husband's assassination and bring about at least some sense of closure to the pain we have endured as a family over unanswered questions surrounding this tragedy. We call for the trial that never happened, not out of rigidly held convictions about the extent of Mr. Ray's involvement in my husband's assassination, but as an appeal for the truth and accountability.
James Earl Ray died a year before the case made it to civil court. After the trial, on May the 20th, 2000, Loyd Jowers died of a heart attack. 1 month later, the Department of Justice concluded its own internal investigation into the findings of the King family civil case. They rejected all of the evidence and conclusions, claiming that James Earl Ray was the lone shooter and only guilty party.
They couldn't stop him any other way, and he had such a huge sympathetic following across the country, grassroots following. And the H.L. Hunt used to meet occasionally with Hoover, and he would tell Hoover that he could take care of King through broadcasting and demean him and all of that. Hoover said, no, that'll never work. He's going to have to be taken out. It's a very important historical fact to understand, the history of political assassinations, so that Americans don't think that what happened to us in the 60s, in our republic in the 60s is some way unique. It's important to understand that political assassinations have gone back as long as human society and human beings have lived together. And what happens ordinarily is that if an individual who has a power base, and the two roads to power, remember, are money and numbers. An individual has a power base and a following and cannot be compromised, cannot be co-opted in some way, then the only road open, that's left open very often for the ruling forces of a society to get rid of that person, is assassination.